Mars, a red glimmer up in the heavens, the fourth planet from the Sun and also second smallest planet in our solar system, Mars has fascinated and terrified people for generations. Myths and legends have been told by numerous cultures to explain everything from apocalyptic events to the coming of war, while today, science fiction writers view Mars as a haven for our dying planet. One of the first reported instances of Mars existed with the ancient Sumerians. They believed the planet to be a sign of war and plague. Mesopotamians believed it to be the star of the dead. Other civilizations, such as the Egyptians and Babylonians, held different beliefs about the planet, recording the transition of the celestial object and revealing that it was not actually supernatural, and also that it performed 37 synodic periods every 79 years. These findings were significant but did not reveal any specific details about the planet, other than its movement, and it wasn't until 1610 that Mars was officially discovered to be a planet. The famous astronomer Galileo Galilei first viewed the celestial object with what would be considered a small amateur-level telescope, allowing him to notice the finer details that revealed the red dot was not a star, but a planet. Galileo, one of the most well-known astronomers in the world, researched thousands of astronomical discoveries in his lifetime, using an optic with a magnification no greater than 10 times that of normal viewing conditions. To compare that to today, the cameras on an average cell phone can zoom in as much as 8 times normal viewing. It wasn't until 1877, over 250 years later, when Giovanni Schiaparelli used an 8.7-inch, or 22-centimeter telescope to produce the first detailed map of Mars. This allowed for a magnified image greater than 50 times normal. Giovanni, an Italian astronomer working in Milan, termed these visible details canali, which translates to channels, grooves in English. It wasn't until 25 years later that these channels were seen by another astronomer by the name of Percival Lowell, when in 1894, using an observatory with an 18-inch telescope, or 45 centimeters, that these canali were confirmed. As astronomers built bigger and better telescopes, polar ice caps could be viewed, giving rise to the idea of seasons and weather patterns on the red planet. This led to a commonly held belief that Mars was a lush oasis, with vast seas and plant life. However, this was all due to speculation. In 1909, astronomers using a 33-inch telescope began viewing the planet with more detail than ever, leading to views of the canali shifting into irregular patterns until ultimately losing shape. This introduced astronomers to the first weather patterns on Mars, revealing that the surface of the red planet was in fact more complicated than previously observed. Roughly 50 years later, in 1962, NASA launched the first of the Mariner spacecraft to begin their investigations of the planets Mars, Venus, and Mercury. These missions eventually led to today's more recent developments into space probes and vehicles, such as NASA's Curiosity rover, which have aided in the exploration, and hopefully, expansion of our solar system. Mars has 2 moons orbiting the red planet, both discovered in 1877 by American astronomer Asaph Hall. These moons, Phobos and Deimos, were named after the supposed father, Ares, also known as Mars, and are known as the Greek gods of horror and terror. Both moons are incredibly difficult to spot, appearing with an apparent magnitude of 11.8 for Phobos and 12.89 for Deimos. This makes Phobos one of the hardest celestial objects to view in our solar system. Mars's moons have a unique shape which comes from the small size. Phobos has a 7-mile, or 11-kilometer radius, while Deimos has a 4-mile, or 6.2-kilometer radius. Appearing as blobs rather than spheres, they are indicative of the little effect of gravity, as it is not concentrated enough to properly mold the shape of the object. Phobos has a surface temperature that ranges from as low as -170 degrees Fahrenheit, or -112 degrees Celsius, to as high as 25 degrees Fahrenheit, or -4 Celsius. It takes roughly 7 hours and a half at roughly 3,700 miles, or 6,000 kilometers from the planet's surface, to complete an orbit. This fast movement allows Phobos to be seen from the Martian surface twice each day. Deimos is much smaller, and much more difficult to view. It takes roughly 30.3 hours for the Moon to orbit Mars and is located roughly 14,580 miles or 23,460 kilometers from the planet. It has roughly half the density of the Earth and is covered in craters. Mars has been studied by astronomers for centuries, but recent developments in the field of space travel have allowed astronomers to view the surface of the planet with unprecedented detail. Most of what we know about the planet has been from unmanned exploration satellites and rovers. These vehicles have been exploring the surface of the planet and have only just recently found evidence of not only water, but also essential chemicals for life within the surface. The surface of the planet contains many geologic phenomena such as impact craters, ice caps, and one of the largest known volcanoes in our solar system, Olympus Mons. In comparison, Mauna Kea, the tallest land formation on Earth, stands at roughly 33,000 feet tall, or 10 kilometers, from its base in the ocean to its peak above ground. Mount Everest is roughly 29,000 feet, or 8,850 meters from its base to peak, while Olympus Mons stands a whopping 72,000 feet tall, or 13.6 miles at 25 kilometers. To put this into perspective, compare yourself walking a distance equal to half the width of France, all while scaling a mountain 2.5 times taller than Mount Everest. Now take a second, and also think about how you would get down from there. The geology of Mars's crust consists of fairly similar rock types and compositions to that of Earth. It is completely lacking in tectonic activity, therefore, the surface of the planet remains stationary. Tie that in with the planet's weak magnetic field and you have very little occurring on the surface of the planet compared to Earth. This does not mean that Mars has always been an inactive desert, as much of the evidence found indicate that there could have been rivers, and possibly life. NASA has been exploring the cosmos for decades, creating some of the most advanced technological achievements man has to offer. One of the most well-known of the Mars expeditions consisted of the Mariner spacecraft, which flew past the planet on some missions, while orbiting the planet on others. Mariner 4 was the very first launched spacecraft to fly past Mars, while Mariner 9, launched on May 30, 1971, is officially the first artificial satellite orbiting Mars. Later expeditions included NASA's Viking project, which was the first spacecraft to safely land on the surface of Mars with an arrival date of June 19, 1976, as well as the more famous Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which arrived in orbit on March 10, 2006. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, built by Lockheed Martin under supervision from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, is an artificial satellite designed to fulfill multiple roles. It hosts an array of instruments from visible and invisible wavelength cameras, spectrometers, and radar, which are used to analyze everything from terrain to mineral compositions of specific areas. It also is capable of transmitting more data back to Earth than every interplanetary mission combined. Most of the detailed images from orbit come from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and it is expected to stay functional until the 2030s. There you have it, a summary of Mars as we know it. If you enjoyed the video, and want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more interesting space and astronomy videos. Also, if you have any suggestions or comments, let me know in the comments section down below.